I'm Catherine.
And as you know, I'm Katie, and Catherine and I went to high school together. We met on the speech and debate team, and we both did Congress at various points, and Catherine was way better than I was at that. And
Definitely not.
on that vein, Catherine is going to be talking about, I guess, talking in public meetings and being able to kind of navigate social situations and personalities involved in that. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what kind of meetings you attend and what kind of spaces you inhabit.
Yeah. So the public meetings that I am usually involved in relate to local government in particular. So discussing projects and things that are happening within your local government. And yeah, that's kind of like the space that we inhabit. It used to be a physical space. um, at rec centers, in public spaces, right, libraries, um, and yeah, other places, other sort of like third spaces that people occupy. Um,
And now it's
and
all on
yeah,
Zoom.
now it's all on Zoom, which like, it's so different. In some ways, it's so much better because you can cook dinner while you're at a public meeting. You can, pet your cat while you're at your public meeting. You can multitask. A lot of folks who have kids, they can take care of their kids, they can cook them dinner, they can watch them, they don't have to worry about childcare. And if the meeting goes until midnight, you're at least home
Right.
at that entire time. Whereas in pre-COVID days, sometimes the meetings ended at 11 and you were in a community rec center, which is about as fun as it sounds on a Monday.
It's
So
like
yeah,
old debate tournaments. Nothing has changed.
yeah. On
Um,
the other hand, like, there's a big question, I think, that's still out and yet to be, the jury has not decided, but like, meetings that are online, on one hand, they're more accessible for some people, but on the other hand, they're maybe less accessible for other people.
right. Yeah. That's actually exactly the point I was about to bring up, which is that, yeah, like when you don't have access to the internet, and if the government is meeting on the internet, right? If, or not the government, but like your public access points are there, it raises a ton of questions about, how do we conduct ourselves? And that's so interesting. Like, I don't go to any public meetings. I'm not involved in local government at all. And that's embarrassing for me as a person. I should do that. Um, and I think talking to people like you and Ellen and a few other people we know from high school who are engaged in local politics is really kind of inspiring for me. But I guess for people who are unaware of what goes on in these meetings behind closed doors or like on the internet, what are some of the topics that normally get discussed, and how do people talk? Like, what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, here, like, people are discussing everything from like an alcohol license for a local business to a neighbor's back deck that they're building. We're usually going to the public meetings to talk about policies or projects, so things that are getting built in your neighborhood. Where my parents live, there were a lot of public meetings about putting bike lanes on a nearby street, and a lot of people were, one, they didn't want the bike lanes because they thought it would cause more traffic, which is not how that quite works. That's not how traffic delay works, folks. But to my dad, it was so interesting. His thought process was so different from my own. He was like, well, if we put bike lanes on a street, then people are going to bike on it. And I was like, okay, I follow, correct. He's like, but then, like, what if the cars hit them? Like, they're going to be more bicyclists, and so they're going to be more likely to get hit.
Right.
um, and those are the sorts of like public comments that you hear, right? You hear what people want, what they don't want, what they like, what they don't like. A lot of questions that we get today, especially in DC, tend to be around data. Like, do you have the data to back up this project? Do you have a data point about this one block of this one 36 long block project?
Right.
um, you know, have you personally stood on that corner and counted like the things that happen on that corner from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m.?
Right.
Um, but we take all of that into account. Like, I think people discount how important public meetings are. And I think that's maybe something you talked to Ellen about, is like, it really does carry weight. When people attend a public meeting or submit a comment online, like, you don't even have to attend the meeting, like, send in an email saying you support a project, like, that actually makes a difference.
Yeah. And I guess that was going to be the next, I mean, that's such an important thing that I wanted to ask you is how do you even get involved? I mean, now obviously during COVID times it's different than it was beforehand, but now let's say I want to be involved in like the Los Feliz governing body concerning stuff like this. I wouldn't even know where to go. What would I do?
Yeah, I mean, generally for especially local governments, you can sign up for their like email listservs. So if you go to LA City, you can sign up for their email listservs. Your council member, you can usually get updates from your council member. You can also, a lot of departments and agencies and governments have social media presences. So you can follow them on Instagram, you can follow them on Twitter. We recently made a TikTok about snow duty. And so I was one of the folks tasked with making that, and I did not art direct it. So, but there's definitely like I think we did an Instagram reel since we technically don't have a TikTok account, um, but it was essentially a TikTok about getting ready for the snow. So,
I think
uh,
that's incredible.
yeah, so your local government is hip and with it, sort of. So look for them on social media. Look to sign up for a list to get notified about projects. If there's something you're really passionate about, that helps you to hone in on, um, getting notifications about the projects happening in your neighborhood. The other thing is email, the agencies that you're interested in hearing from or your council member, and let them know. And usually someone from constituent services or whatnot can give you better guidance on like where to go and what resources are available.
How many people are normally at these meetings?
So pre-COVID, you get a couple dozen folks, right? So we had a meeting right before COVID in like early March of 2020 at a public library in DC, and it was about 3 projects, and we had about 2 to 3 dozen people, maybe. Um, and then we had another meeting about another project it was about one of those projects, and then another project in close proximity, in close geographic proximity to that meeting or that project. Um, and that meeting was on Zoom, and we had 250, 300 people. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And these are like bike lane projects. They're not, we're not spending billions of dollars here. We're spending $2 million
Yeah.
in 2 different neighborhoods, or 3 different neighborhoods. But yeah, so online meetings really do seem to expand the ability for people to attend a meeting. Um, but it does raise concerns about how do we engage older adults? How do we engage people who may not have access to Wi-Fi at home? Because that's still a thing. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people like live in a bubble where they think everyone has a computer and a smartphone and Wi-Fi at home, and that's just not the case in this country. And so figuring out how we engage those folks, like, do we send paper copies of everything to senior centers in the area where older adults live, or things like that?
And I think that's also important because like there's kind of the flip side of that, which is that I'm, in the most technologically connected generation, and I still didn't even know, where these things are. So it's like how do you get that kind of publicity about these projects and about these meetings so that everyone can attend? So tough issues. In this last minute here, do you have any kind of like final comments about, public speaking, public meetings, getting these kinds of things out and about?
On public meetings, attend them, like submit public comments, have a voice in your government, vote in your local elections. Those down ballot elections, they matter. Um, and, if you live in a place where you have statehood, you can also let your senators know to support DC statehood so that some of us can eventually get congressional representation. Um, and then on public speaking at public meetings, just have an even keel. If someone wants to, care loudly at you, nod and, say, okay, I understand. Thank you for sharing. Don't go off on them. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere.
All right. Well, we are out of time, and I appreciate our conversations always. It's so good to see you, and thank you for being here.
Yeah. Good to see you, Katie. Thanks.